Hello, I'm Ron Squire. Welcome to highlights of the 2026 Formula SimRacing World Championship. Round 5 at the halfway point of the 2026 season is the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal. Situated on the St. Lawrence River, the circuit Gilles Villeneuve has a technical challenge for the drivers. Almost resembling a street circuit due to the tight confines, this track provides an unusual element of strategy with the circuit tough on the brakes in particular. The teams need to ace a balanced setup to get around this place 70 times over. Mark Schutter surprised everyone by taking his first pole position of the season on a track that the world champion seems to be the strongest on. Jan Grankvist misses out on the top spot by just 1/10 of a second. Luc Mounier is another 10th behind, whilst the championship leader Alex Hu couldn't crack Montreal in qualifying, taking 4th. Jas Braxok and Peter Burlak lock out the third row, while Zog Sukes and Lucas Murdo in 7th and 8th as both drivers swap teams. George Zalgianis takes 9th despite being over a second off the pace in qualifying, with Nando Maza in 10th, followed by Matt Toussaint in 11th. With the absence of the Mission 19 teams, as well as Squire Nation Esports and Valley Esports, all three Seven Arrows affiliated cars have a chance at points as Snowden, Ilex and Suisi line up against each other, and Jansen Bins, who returns after a race absence, starts in 15th with no set time. Amin Suisi suffered a technical problem just before the start and in the first 7 laps of the race, forcing the Tunisian to start from pit lane 7 laps down. To the race start, Mark Schutter neatly defends his lead from Jan Grankvist in the lead up to turn 1, whilst Mounier temporarily takes second from Grankvist in the lead up to turn 2, in which Grankvist retakes the position with ease. One man at the back who made a lightning start is Jansen Bins. Having disposed of Zaba Ilex, his Luxembourg native is now chasing down Matt Toussaint for 12th, but must be wary of the tight confines of Montreal. At the end of the opening lap, Schutter leads from Grankvist, Mounier, Lehoux, Burlak, Braxok, Murdo, Zukes, Zalgianis and Maza. The first DRS overtake of the race was made when Jan Braxok makes light work of Peter Burlak going down the back straight, the Ottomali driver now in 5th. His new teammate Lucas Murdo doesn't do any better as Zog forces his way past the Brazilian at the hairpin on the next lap to move up to 7th. At the back, Amin Suisi finally joins the race on lap 7, but immediately pits on the same lap to sort out some more technical issues. A bad day doesn't even begin for the Tunisian. He would continue though, unlike Matt Toussaint, his technical issues were more severe, dropping the Brit out of the race on lap 8. Lap 9 and an eyebrow raise for the stewards as Lucas Murdo nudges into the back of Burlak at the first corner, forcing the Croatian to lose ground and 2 places to both Murdo and Zalgianis, dropping the MV Conquest driver to 9th. So 10 laps in, Mark Schutter defends his lead well from Mounier, who is less than 7/10 in front of both ALM MV cars, with Jan Grankvist ahead of Alex Hu. Jas Braxok is the highest of the soft runners in 5th and over a second from Zog Sukes. Lucas Murdo and George Zalgianis pulls away from Peter Burlak as a result of the nudge the lap before, and Will Snowden cracks the top 10 so far in the race. Jansen Bins becomes the second retirement of the race as the Luxembourg driver pushed too much and rear-ended into the wall of champions on lap 10. Not a great return for the optimal driver. Burlak attempts to go back up the field with an overtake on Zalgianis at a hairpin on lap 12, but the Greek holds firm to 8th. The day would end for Lucas Murdo as he becomes the second man to retire with severe technical issues, the team swap not working in the Brazilian's favour. That 14er, Loic Mounier would make his move on the world champion down the back straight as the Frenchman now leads going into the next lap. Schutter immediately finds himself in a sticky situation as the Hu overtakes the world champion at turn 1 and almost taking Mounier into turn 2. The two Frenchmen collide but both stabilise their positions, not allowing Schutter to retake second as the Hu pushes forward and even tries to overtake Mounier at the next corner, but to no avail. The Hu would take the lead from Mounier just 2 laps later. Lap 19 and Zalgianis becomes the first man to stop and change from softs to mediums. The Greek rejoins in 11th, several laps in front of Suisi. 12 would become 11 as on lap 20, Zaba Ilex goes wide and hits the wall at the exit of turn 2, leaving the Hungarian with another finish without any points. Lap 27 and Loic Mounier becomes the first of the leaders to pit in, changing from mediums to softs and rejoining in 6th behind Sukes. The Frenchman would overtake the octagonal hosting driver down the back straight on the next lap. Lap 28 and the top 2 were pitted at the same time, with Lehoux followed in by Schutter. The two came real close to colliding with each other on exit, but Lehoux still leads the duo on mediums while Schutter fits on softs. The two men rejoins in 5th and 6th, whilst Jan Grankvist assumes the lead. Both men will dispose of Zukes by the beginning of lap 30. Jan Grankvist also makes a stop on the same lap and rejoins just behind Zukes, whilst Braxok is now the new leader. Schutter would begin his push back up the field with a simple but daring overtake down the back straight on the Hu for 3rd place, whilst further back Grankvist disposes of Zukes to going into the 31st lap. Zukes would pit at the end of the same lap. Lap 33 and Mounier retakes the lead of the race from Braxok only after a few laps, the Frenchman pulling away from the Ottomali driver. So a halfway distance is Loic Mounier who leads the pack from Jan Braxok, but Mark Suter is on a comeback charge despite the increasing pressure from Alex Lehou behind. Jan Grankvist is holding well in 5th, whilst Peter Burlak's race has become quiet in 6th. Zolksux is keeping his race together on track for his new team in 7th, whilst George Zalgianis stabilises his position in 8th. Lando Marza is in 9th, just a few seconds ahead of Will Snowden, who is still on the same lap as the rest of the leaders, just 7 laps from teammate Amin Suisi. Sluter is refusing to give up his fight for the lead, and his fight back continues on lap 37 as the world champion makes a daring overtake on Braxok down the back straight. The German now up into 2nd and less than 2 seconds from Mounier. Braxok himself would pit in just a few laps later, the Hungarian changing to softs as he rejoins in 6th behind Burlak. Since lap 40, Sluter's been putting an immense amount of pressure on Mounier, but the Frenchman seems unfazed by the German's increasing pace. But Mounier would get a little bit of breathing space as Sluter went a little bit too eager on the exit of turn 9, losing grip and time momentarily. Lap 43 and Zolksux finally calls it a day in the pit lane after front wing and suspension damage. The new team doesn't bring any luck for the Hungarian or for optimal hosting. Lap 45 and Zook's former teammate Braxok makes a keen overtake on Burlak in 5th. Optimal is still the stronger of the optimal affiliated teams so far this season. Lap 46 and Zalgianis makes a stop and rejoins just behind Snowden, the Greek on fresh mediums and the knowledge that he's on course for a great clutch of points this afternoon. Finally, after nearly 20 laps since his stop, Mark Suter retakes the lead from Mounier after a tense struggle down the back straight. Mounier would make a stop at the end of the next lap and rejoins in 6th behind teammate Burlak. Suter's lead would only last for 2 laps before he himself would pit on lap 50 with Grankvist behind him as Lehou takes the lead for the first time in the race. Both Suter and Grankvist rejoins in 5th and 6th. But for Suter, he rejoins literally just behind Mounier, who worked the undercut to wonders, with Germans seemingly frustrated at the current situation. Lehou pits in on lap 52 as the championship leader takes on fresh softs. The ALMMV driver back out in front of Grankvist in 6th as Braxok now leads the race. As Burlak pits on lap 53, Mounier now has a clear track in front of him, but with no slipstream off his teammate, Sluter can now see a perfect opportunity to take 2nd quickly. The move that happened on the back straight on Mounier is seemingly helpless, the world champion back in 2nd and chasing down Braxok for the lead. But on lap 55, with his softs properly aging, Braxok pits in for most likely his final stop from the lead as he takes on fresh mediums, with Sluter taking the lead for the 2nd time. Braxok back out in 5th, with some gap to Grankvist just in front of him. But the lead would last once again for only a couple laps as Mounier sees an opportunity following Sluter's slightly sloppy exit from the world champions. The Frenchman diving on the inside of turn 1 to take the lead and instantly switching back to avoid Sluter retaking his position. Mounier makes the move stick, but with the Frenchman's pace over the next few laps, both ALMMV drivers are in a hunt for the lead with all 4 cars within a second and a half of each other. So as we approach the last 10 laps, Loic Mounier leads by a hair strand from Mark Suter, who himself is wary of both ALMMVs of Alex Lehou and Jan Grankvist from behind. Jan Braxok is over 5 seconds away from the top 4, but can breathe easily knowing that Peter Burlak is nearly 9 seconds behind. George Zalgianis is the last man not to be lapped in 7th, whilst both Will Snowden and Lando Marza bicker for 8th, and despite starting the race with only 6 laps late, Amin Suisi is still running and not stopping anytime soon. The pressure that Mounier was facing in the lead was excruciating and he held off Suter for as long as he dared. Plus with the train of the top 4, Braxok is now involved in the tussle and gradually catching up to the quartet by lap 65. Lap 66 and Lehou attempts to make a move on Sluter down turn 1 but did not have enough pace to make the move stick and Sluter closes the door on the championship leader as Grankvist looks on. Mounier finally cracks once again on lap 67 as Sluter for the 3rd time executes a great overtake on the Frenchman down the back straight for the lead, but again the lead was only short-lived as Mounier replicates the overtake on the next lap. Mounier once again leads as Sluter and both ALMVs look on. On the penultimate lap, Sluter would make one more move on Sluter down the back straight and again makes the move to stick, and this time he is all the way to the finish line. Taking his first win of the season, Mark Sluter wins convincingly in Montreal in a sigh of relief for the world champion. Whilst behind Sluter, Alex Lehou makes a last minute overtake on Loic Mounier at the final chicane to take 2nd on a difficult afternoon for ALMMV, whilst the MV Conquest driver has to settle for 3rd. Jan Grankvist had a steady race to take 4th, whilst Jan Braxok caught up to the top 4 in the end, but was unable to crack it, settling for 5th. Peter Burlak was the last of the drivers not to be lapped in 6th, whilst George Zalgianis had a quiet time in Canada to take 7th. Will Snowden and Lando Marza take 8th and 9th despite being a lap down, and despite taking 10th, Amin Suisi was not classified after finishing less than 90% of the race, leaving the Tunisian with no points. In the drivers' table, Alex Lahul still leads with a gap at 8 points to Jan Granqvist, but with Mark Suter back in the title picture, the race is less than straightforward for ALMMV. Janis Braxtock is the highest of the drivers for the optimal teams in 4th, whilst Luc Mounier is only behind by 3 points. Peter Perlac remains in 6th despite his less than ideal performance in Montreal, whilst Nando Marza and Will Snowden leap ahead of the absent Christian Pascal, and despite not scoring in Canada, Suisi still remains in the top 10. In the constructors, both ALMMV and MV Conquest still lead the way with a gap of 37 points between each other. Ground Effect is still some way off the top by 82 points, but bolstered by Suter's win. Optimali is still 4th despite a slightly lacklustre performance in Canada. 7 Hours and Invictus are still only 2 points separated in 5th and 6th. While there's no change for the rest of the teams, as both Squire Nation Esports and Valley Esports were absent in Canada. Optimal Hosting didn't capitalise following Zolksuk's retirement. Fellow One's place is safe due to Optimal Hosting not getting a single point following Janssen Bince's exit, and 7 Hours Engineering remain at the bottom behind Elk International and Supernova following Zaba Elex's early bath. The next race is the British Grand Prix at Silverstone on Father's Day, Sunday the 21st of June. You can watch that race live as it happens right here on our YouTube channel. Qualifying begins at 8:25pm GMT, with the race starting at 8:45pm GMT. In the meantime, you can join in on forums at formula-racing.net, as well as a Discord server for up-to-date information and join in on the community. The links are in the description below, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. We hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I'm Ron Squire, and join us for the next round of the 2026 Formula Sim Racing World Championship.